"No man wants me," said the lonely poor black woman, struggling to keep her business from bankruptcy. But her life changes forever when a powerful mafia boss takes her to live with him not by choice, but as his prisoner. Accused of being a spy for his enemies, she's trapped in his luxurious mansion, surrounded by armed guards with no way to escape. She should be terrified. She should hate him. But as she witnesses glimpses of his hidden humanity, the tenderness he shows only to his grandmother, the pain behind his cold exterior, something unexpected happens. When attackers try to kidnap her, the dangerous man who once imprisoned her kills to protect her, revealing the fierce possessiveness beneath his calculated control. As they uncover a betrayal that threatens everything, the line between captive and partner begins to blur. But in a world where trust comes at a deadly price, can a woman who believed she was unwanted survive becoming the one thing the most dangerous man in Chicago can't live without? The Excel spreadsheet on Imani's laptop screen blurred as tears threatened to fall. She blinked them away, refusing to cry over another string of negative numbers. The late afternoon sun filtering through her small apartment's window cast shadows across her dining table, which doubled as her office desk. The golden light highlighted the dust particles floating in the air, a reminder that she hadn't had time to clean properly in weeks. Her phone buzzed again, the fourth call from her credit card company today. She let it go to voicemail, her stomach clenching with the familiar mix of dread and shame. The red notification bubble on her screen seemed to mock her, growing larger with each missed call. "Just 3 more months," she whispered, running her fingers through her curly hair, tugging slightly at the roots as if the physical pain could distract from the emotional ache. 3 months before everything I've built disappears. Her voice cracked on the last. The word, betraying the composure she tried so hard to maintain. The walls of her modest apartment were decorated with photos from past events, weddings, corporate galas, charity functions. Each image represented a perfect moment she'd created for others, the kind she'd never experienced growing up, shuffled between foster homes after losing her parents in a car accident at 8 years old. She'd framed each photo herself, carefully arranging them to showcase her best work. Sometimes at night, she'd stare at these images, reminding herself that she had value, that she could create beauty even if she couldn't seem to find it in her own life. She remembered sitting in Mrs. Peterson's office at Social Services, clutching her little backpack while the woman explained she'd be temporarily placed until they found her a forever home. The scratchy fabric of the chair had irritated her bare legs, and the fluorescent lights had made everything look harsh and unwelcoming. Temporary became permanent. No one wanted to adopt the quiet, serious child who organized her foster siblings' toys by color and size, who folded her clothes with military precision, who seemed both too mature and too fragile. Her laptop pinged with an incoming email, probably another cancellation. Her mysterious blacklisting had spread through Chicago's elite social circles like wildfire over the past year. No one would tell her why, but the whispers and closed doors were killing Clark occasions. She'd built her business from nothing, working nights as a bartender to fund her first few events, sleeping 4 hours a night for years. Now it was crumbling through her fingers like sand. Her cell phone rang again. She reached to silence it, but paused at the unfamiliar number. Her throat tightened as she answered, trying to sound professional despite the tightness in her chest. "Clark Occasions, this is Imani. Thank God you answered." The voice was breathless, anxious, with the distinct, polished tone of old. "Money. This is Patricia Winters. I'm in desperate need of an event planner for the Chicago Elite Charity Gala. Our regular coordinator quit without notice, and the event is in 2 weeks." Imani's heart raced, her fingers gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. The Winters were Chicago royalty, with connections to every important family in the city. This gala was the social event of the season, with coverage in all the major publications and attendance by everyone who mattered. "That's quite a tight timeline, Mrs. Winters," she said, amazed at how steady her voice sounded when her insides were doing somersaults. "Please call me Patricia, and I know it's asking the impossible, but I'm willing to pay double your regular fee. We're completely desperate." The woman's voice held a note of panic that Imani recognized all too well from brides a week before their weddings. Double fee. Imani's mind raced through calculations, her eyes darting back to the spreadsheet still open on her screen. With that money, she could keep her business afloat for at least 6 more months. 6 months to rebuild her reputation, to figure out who was sabotaging her, to save everything she'd worked for. "I can make it happen," she said firmly, already mentally rearranging her schedule and making lists of calls she needed to place. The next 2 weeks became a blur of 18-hour days. Imani called in every favor she'd earned over the years, pulling strings she didn't even know she had. She negotiated with vendors, coordinated with the venue, and managed 1,000 details while running on coffee and determination. Her apartment became command central, with sample books, fabric swatches, and vendor contracts covering every surface. She slept on her couch, when she slept at all, too exhausted to make it to her bedroom. 3 days before the event, she overheard a conversation while checking the table settings at the Peninsula Hotel's ballroom. Her hands were carefully measuring the portisheading, exact distance between each piece of silverware when the voices drifted over from the entrance. "Really, Patricia? Someone like her for the gala?" The voice dripped with disdain, each syllable carefully enunciated to maximize the insult. "I thought you always used Marshall events." "She came highly recommended," Patricia replied, but her tone held a note of uncertainty, wavering slightly under the pressure of social judgment. Imani's hands trembled as she adjusted a crystal champagne flute, nearly toppling it. Someone like her. The words echoed familiar doubts from her childhood. Too serious, too different, not quite right for our family. She straightened her back and continued working, swallowing down the familiar taste of rejection that had followed her all her life. The night before the gala, Imani stood in the transformed ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across ivory silk draping that cascaded from ceiling to floor like frozen waterfalls. Imported roses and orchids created cascading centerpieces, their subtle fragrance perfuming the air. Every detail was perfect, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the precise arrangement of the sterling silver cutlery. The room glowed with understated elegance, exactly as she had envisioned it. The click of expensive shoes on marble made her turn. A group of men entered the ballroom, led by someone who commanded attention without effort. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that emphasized broad shoulders, he moved with predatory grace that seemed both natural and practiced. His features were aristocratic, high cheekbones, straight nose, strong jaw, but his dark eyes held no warmth as they surveyed the room. They were calculating, assessing, like a chess player evaluating the board before making a devastating move. Something primitive in Imani's brain screamed danger, but she squared her shoulders and approached the group. She'd fought too hard to let anyone intimidate her now. Her heels clicked confidently across the marble floor as she put on her professional smile. "Good evening. I'm Imani Clark, the event coordinator. Is there something I can help you with?" Her voice came out clearer and stronger than she expected, given the way her heart hammered against her ribs, those cold eyes fixed on her face. She felt stripped bare, analyzed, catalogued. It was as if he could see every insecurity, every doubt, every fear she'd ever had. Without a word, he turned and walked away, his security detail following in his wake, their bodies moving in perfect formation around him, like planets orbiting a dark star. Imani released a shaky breath, trying to shake off the unsettling encounter. Her hand instinctively went to her throat, feeling her racing pulse beneath her fingertips. She had too much work left to worry about strange men with dangerous eyes. Tomorrow's gala had to be perfect. Her future depended on it, and she'd learned long ago that the only person she could truly count on was herself. The morning sun hadn't yet risen when Imani pulled up to the Peninsula Hotel. Her reflection in the lobby's polished marble showed dark circles under her eyes, barely concealed by makeup. 14 days of nonstop work had taken their toll, but she straightened her black cocktail dress and pushed through her exhaustion. "Miss Clark," the catering manager waved her over. "The ice sculptures are melting faster than expected." Before she could respond, a team of men in dark suits entered the lobby. They moved with military precision, speaking into earpieces and checking behind potted plants. These weren't the hotel's regular security staff. "I need to see everyone's credentials," one announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Staff, vendors, everyone." Imani spent the next hour providing documentation for her entire team, while more security personnel installed additional scanning equipment at every entrance. By the time guests began arriving at 7, the hotel felt more like a fortress than a luxury venue. The ballroom slowly filled with Chicago's elite. Imani moved efficiently between groups, directing servers and solving minor emergencies. A wine glass shattered. She had replacement linens ready. The vegetarian option ran low. She'd anticipated this and had extra portions prepared. Simply magnificent, Patricia Winters gushed to her friends. "I can't believe she pulled this together in 2 weeks." Pride warmed Imani's chest, but she couldn't shake the growing tension in the room. The crowd had divided into clear territories. Near the main bar, Alessandro Russo held court, his presence drawing constant deference from men in expensive suits. Across the room, an older Italian man, she heard someone address him as Vincent Moretti, commanded his own circle of influence. The two groups never mixed, maintaining an invisible boundary down the center of the ballroom. When their eyes met across the space, the air crackled with unspoken hostility. At 10:30, the DJ's backup system glitched. Imani hurried to retrieve her emergency playlist from the office she'd been using. She was so focused on finding the right USB drive that she didn't notice the voices until she'd already opened the door. "The waterfront project needs to move forward, Mr. Russo." Mayor Williams' normally booming voice was hushed, almost pleading. "But the current inspectors, I'll ensure the right people are in place," Alessandro cut in smoothly. His Italian accent was subtle but present. "You need only concern yourself with the council vote." Imani froze. A man near the door noticed her first, raising his phone. The camera flash made her flinch. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, backing away. "Wrong room." She fled down the hallway, her heels clicking against marble. For the rest of the night, she felt watched. Security personnel shadowed her movements. Men in suits observed her while pretending not to. Near midnight, she passed 2 of Alessandro's men while checking the dessert station. "Definitely the Moretti spy," one muttered, his eyes following her. "Boss wants." Imani quickened her pace, focusing on her remaining tasks. The gala was almost over. "Just get through the night," she told herself. The last guests departed around 1 in the morning. Imani was in the kitchen, thanking the exhausted catering staff, when heavy footsteps approached. 2 men from Alessandro's security team appeared in the doorway. "Miss Clark." The taller one smiled, but his eyes remained cold. "Mr. Russo would like to discuss your services tonight." Everything in her screamed that something was wrong. These men weren't hotel employees. They hadn't been part of the event staff. They had no reason to approach her in the kitchen, rather than sending a formal request. "I need to finish up here first," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mr. Russo insists." The second man moved behind her. They guided her through back service corridors she didn't know existed, away from the public areas. Imani's heart hammered. She opened her mouth to scream just as a sweet-smelling cloth pressed against her face. The world tilted sideways. Her last conscious thought was bitter. After everything she'd survived, after building herself up from nothing, her business troubles now seemed laughably insignificant. The first sensation that hit Imani was the throbbing in her head. Her mouth felt like cotton, and even the soft vibration of the car engine sent waves of nausea through her. She tried to move her hands, finding them bound together with plastic zip ties that bit into her skin. The leather seats were cool against her bare arms as she struggled to full consciousness. 2 men in dark suits flanked her, their shoulders pressed against hers in the back seat, neither looking at her or speaking. Through tinted windows, she caught glimpses of Chicago's outskirts giving way to expansive estates hidden behind iron gates and manicured hedges. The car slowed, approaching a gate that could have belonged to a medieval fortress. Security cameras tracked their movement as armed guards verified the vehicle. Imani's heart raced as they proceeded up a winding driveway lined with perfectly spaced trees. The mansion that emerged from the darkness was a study in old-world opulence meets modern security. Mediterranean architecture sprawled across manicured grounds, but Imani's trained eye caught the subtle presence of surveillance equipment and motion sensors disguised among the landscaping. Her captors guided her from the car, their grip firm but not cruel, as they led her through massive wooden doors into a marble-floored foyer. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over antique furniture and priceless art. Under different circumstances, Imani would have appreciated the careful curation of classic and contemporary pieces. They escorted her down a hallway lined with oil paintings to a study that smelled of leather and expensive cigars. Alessandro Russo stood behind a massive desk, his tall frame silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city lights below. He'd loosened his tie since the gala, but otherwise looked as impeccable as he had hours earlier. "Miss Clark." His voice was soft but carried an edge that made her shiver. "Or whatever your real name might be." "This is a mistake," Imani said, hating how her voice shook. "I'm just an event planner." "I have no idea what—" An event planner who spent considerable time speaking with known Moretti associates. He pressed a button on his laptop, and photos appeared on a wall-mounted screen. There she was, speaking with various guests throughout the night. "Rather convenient that you were hired last minute for such a high-profile event." "I talked to everyone. It was my job." The zip ties dug into her wrists as she gestured. "Mrs. Winters hired me because her original planner quit. I can prove it. Check my phone, my contracts. We've been tracking a leak in my organization for months." Alessandro moved around the desk with predatory grace. Tonight's gala provided an opportunity to identify potential problems. He studied her face. "You fit several concerning patterns." I don't know anything about leaks or Moretus or whatever this is. Tears of frustration burned her eyes. I'm nobody. I'm just trying to save my failing business. Alessandro's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and for just a moment, something like genuine anger flashed across his features before his mask of control returned. Take her upstairs, he commanded someone behind her. Marco will explain the rules. He fixed Imani with a cold stare. Remember, this lying to me has consequences I don't think you want to experience. A man stepped forward. Marco, she assumed, and took her arm. Unlike the others, he had an air of professional efficiency rather than menace. He led her up 2 flights of stairs to a wing that felt more residential than the formal lower floors. These will be your quarters, he said, opening a door to reveal a suite that would have been at home in a luxury hotel. The rules are simple. You don't leave without an escort. The windows are reinforced and alarmed. The door locks from the outside at night. Meals will be brought to you. Attempt to escape or contact anyone, and Mr. Tained. Russo's hospitality will end. Imani stepped into the room, noting the elegant furnishings that couldn't disguise its purpose as a prison. How long? As long as Mr. Russo deems necessary. Marco cut the zip ties from her wrists. There are clothes in the closet. Bathroom through there. Try to rest. The lock engaged with a heavy click that seemed to echo through Imani's bones. She stood frozen for several moments, still in her black cocktail dress from the gala, her carefully styled hair now falling loose around her shoulders. The reality of her situation crashed over her. Her legs gave out, and she sank onto the edge of the king-sized bed. Tears came in earnest now, scared, frustrated, angry tears that left mascara tracks down her cheeks. When the tears finally slowed, her analytical mind began to take over. She studied the room methodically, noting the quality of the furnishings even as she looked for weaknesses. The windows were indeed reinforced, with subtle sensors visible in the frames. The bathroom was stocked with expensive toiletries, but contained nothing sharp or potentially useful as a tool. Even the hangers in the walk-in closet were the soft fabric type that couldn't be fashioned into a weapon. The digital clock on the nightstand clicked over to 3:47 a.m. Imani stood, kicking off her heels and beginning a more thorough examination of her gilded cage. She might be terrified, but she hadn't survived foster care and built a business from nothing by giving up when things got hard. Morning sunlight pierced through the windows, rousing Imani from a restless sleep. Her cocktail dress from the gala was wrinkled, a physical reminder of how her life had transformed in mere hours. Her makeup was smeared, and her muscles ached from the awkward position she'd finally fallen asleep in. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A petite woman in a neat uniform entered, carrying a breakfast tray and garment bags. "Good morning, Miss Clark. I'm Sophia. I've brought you breakfast and some clothing, Mr. Russo had delivered." She set the tray on a small table by the window. Imani straightened, running a hand through her tangled hair. "I need to speak with Mr. Russo immediately." "Mr. Russo has meetings all day," Sophia replied, hanging the garment bags in the closet. "He'll see you at dinner." "This is ridiculous. I'm not a spy, I'm an event planner." Imani moved to inspect the clothing, surprised to find everything in her size. "How did he?" "Mr. Russo is very thorough," Sophia said simply. She gestured toward the bathroom. "There are fresh towels and toiletries if you'd like to shower." Over the next few hours, Imani alternated between examining every inch of her suite for weaknesses and trying to extract information from Sophia, who appeared periodically to bring lunch and check on her needs. "How long has Mr. Russo owned this estate?" Imani asked casually as Sophia collected the lunch dishes. "The Russo family has owned this property for 3 generations." Sophia's tone was polite but measured. "They're very influential in Chicago's development." "Development? What kind of business does he run exactly?" Sophia's slight hesitation told Imani more than her words. "Mr. Russo has interests in many industries: real estate, shipping, private security." At 4 o'clock, Marco arrived. "Mr. Russo requested I show you some of the house before dinner." The tour revealed both the mansion's grandeur and its fortress, like nature. The library contained floor-to-ceiling shelves of leather-bound books. The conservatory housed rare orchids beneath soaring glass ceilings. The formal dining room could seat 30 beneath crystal chandeliers, but Imani's trained eye caught other details. Armed guards patrolled the manicured grounds. Security cameras covered every angle. The windows were all reinforced. The estate sat isolated behind high walls and dense trees. "The West Wing is strictly off-limits," Marco said firmly as they passed a closed door, "as are the basement levels and security offices." Imani's heart sank as she realized the full scope of her imprisonment. Even if she escaped her room, the layers of security made getting off the property virtually impossible. At dinner, Alessandro sat at the head of the massive table, Imani to his right. The formal place setting couldn't disguise the interrogation. "Tell me about Vincent Moretti's shipping operations," he demanded between bites of perfectly cooked steak. "For the 100th time, I don't know anything about Moretti." Imani set down her fork. "I plan events, that's all." "You spoke with his nephew for quite a while last night. He was complaining that the wine wasn't properly chilled. I was doing my job." Their back and forth was interrupted by the shuffle of a walker. An elderly woman appeared, her silver hair elegantly styled despite her slightly confused expression. "Alessandro, dear, who's your lovely guest?" she asked, smiling warmly at Imani. Alessandro's transformation was immediate. He rose, gently supporting his grandmother's elbow as he helped her to a chair. "Nana, this is Miss Clark. She's staying with us for a while." "Oh, is she your new girlfriend? Such a pretty girl." Nana Rosa patted Imani's hand. "It's about time you found someone, Tesoro." "No, Nana." Alessandro's voice was patient, tender even. "Would you like some dinner?" After the meal, Marco led Imani back upstairs. She paused at a large photograph in the hallway. A younger Alessandro stood with an elegantly dressed couple and his grandmother, all smiling at the camera. "Are those his parents?" she asked. Marco's expression hardened. "Don't mention them to Mr. Russo if you want to stay comfortable." He urged her forward with a firm hand on her elbow. Back in her room, Imani noticed something new on the writing desk, a decorative letter opener among the stationery supplies. She quickly slipped it under her mattress, her first potential tool. Standing at the window, she watched moonlight silver the grounds. Guards made their rounds, dogs patrolled the perimeter, and cameras blinked steadily. The crushing weight of her situation settled over her. For now, survival meant playing by Alessandro's rules while looking for opportunities. She couldn't fight her way out, but maybe she could think her way out if she stayed alive long enough to find a weakness in his armor. The library's leather chairs and towering shelves offered little comfort to Imani as she tried to lose herself in a well-worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. Marco stood near the entrance, his presence a constant reminder of her captivity. She'd been here 3 days, but it felt like weeks. The heavy doors swung open, and Alessandro strode in, his tailored suit as impeccable as his cold demeanor. Without a word, he dropped a thick manila folder on the table in front of her. Documents spilled out: foster care records, business licenses, bank statements, her entire life reduced to paper trails. "Interesting reading?" he asked, his voice deceptively casual. Imani's hands trembled as she picked up her childhood photo from Golden Gate's foster home. "You've been busy." "I'm thorough." Alessandro leaned against the table, studying her face. "Your business started failing exactly 13 months ago. Major clients suddenly canceling, venues becoming unavailable, suppliers refusing to work with you." "Someone blacklisted me," Imani said quietly. "I never knew why. Or perhaps it was orchestrated to make you desperate enough to accept any job like a last-minute gala planning request." He pulled out surveillance photos. "This is Carlo Vega leaving your office building 2 months ago, known Moretti associate." Imani's eyes widened at the grainy image. He wanted to plan his daughter's wedding. I gave him a quote, but he never called back. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Alessandro's fingers drummed the table. "Yet your background check is almost too perfect for a spy. Foster care creates ideal cover, no family ties, sympathetic backstory. But the level of detail in your history, the genuine struggles." He shook his head. "Someone's playing a very complicated game." "I'm not playing any game," Imani insisted. "I'm just trying to survive." Something flickered in Alessandro's eyes, doubt, perhaps. "You've been cooperative. I'm willing to extend certain privileges. The library, gardens, common areas are now available to you with supervision, of course." Over the next few days, Imani established a careful routine. Breakfast in her room, reading in the Fibsless. Library, supervised walks in the garden. She cataloged every detail: guard rotations, security camera positions, staff schedules. Sophia became a friendly presence, sharing small kindnesses like extra desserts or fresh flowers for her room. Nana Rosa often found her in the library, delighting in having someone new to share stories with. The elderly woman's mind wandered, but her affection seemed genuine. "Such a serious girl," she'd say, patting Imani's hand. "You remind me of Alessandro before." She'd always stop herself, pain flickering across her face. One afternoon, while walking the rose garden with Marco, raised voices drew her attention. Alessandro and a man she recognized as his cousin Dante were arguing near the greenhouse. "The Morettis are moving product through our territory." Dante's face was flushed with anger. "We need to send a message, hit their warehouses, disrupt their shipments." "Brute force isn't the answer," Alessandro replied coldly. "We need their guard down before we move. Patience, cousin." "Patience?" Dante scoffed. "Like your patience with that woman? She could be feeding information." "Enough." Alessandro's tone ended the discussion. Later, organizing library shelves to keep her mind occupied, Imani found the newspaper clipping tucked inside an old ledger. The headline read, "Prominent business couple dies in car crash." The photo showed Alessandro's parents. Their resemblance to the man who held her captive was striking. The article's date matched a significant territorial shift in Chicago's underworld. Marco appeared suddenly. "That's not for your eyes." He escorted her firmly back to her room, his usual professional manner tinged with anxiety. That evening, a summons came from Alessandro's study. She found him at his desk, crystal tumbler in hand, suit jacket discarded. He gestured to a matching glass of wine set out for her. "I'm not much for drinking with strangers," Imani said. "Are we strangers, Miss Clark? You've been asking about my family." His voice carried a dangerous edge. "I want to know why." Imani lifted her chin. "If I'm going to be held captive in your home, I think I deserve to understand whose hospitality I'm enjoying." A flash of genuine amusement crossed his face before disappearing. Bold words from a prisoner. "Would you prefer I cower?" "Most people do." "I'm not most people." "No," he said thoughtfully. "You're not." He studied her over his glass. "Someone wanted you at that gala, Miss Clark. Someone wanted you to see me with the mayor. The question is who and why they're using you." The words followed Imani back to her room, echoing in her mind as midnight approached. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering who had orchestrated her downfall and current imprisonment. The realization that she was merely a pawn in someone else's game left her cold despite the warmth of her luxurious bedding. Sunlight streamed through the conservatory's glass panels, casting rainbow prisms across the marble floor. Imani sat with Nonna Rosa at the wrought iron table, helping the elderly woman arrange pink peonies and white lilies in an antique crystal vase. Marco maintained his watchful position by the door, his presence now familiar enough that Imani almost forgot he was there. "No, Cara," Nonna Rosa tutted, adjusting a stem Imani had placed. "Flowers are like family, each one needs its proper place to thrive." Her weathered hands moved with surprising precision. Suddenly, the old woman's fingers clamped around Imani's wrist with unexpected strength. Her usual warm expression hardened into something urgent. "Be careful of the snake in the garden," she whispered, eyes sharp with clarity. "Not all Russos have honor." Before Imani could respond, Nonna Rosa released her and returned to the flowers as if nothing had happened. Over the following days, Imani found herself settling into an unexpected rhythm within the mansion. While never forgetting her status as a prisoner, she discovered that keeping busy helped maintain her sanity. When she noticed Sophia struggling with a disorganized linen closet, Imani offered to help implement the same organizational system she used for event supplies. "You have a good eye for order," Sophia commented as they sorted linens by size and type. "Most guests just make demands." "I'm hardly a guest," Imani replied, but Sophia's small smile suggested the staff might see her differently. In the kitchen, she found Chef Antonio cursing in Italian over a lost recipe for Nonna Rosa's favorite torta. Imani's experience managing catering crews helped her calm the situation, and she spent an afternoon assisting him with measurements and timing. The resulting dessert brought a rare smile to Alessandro's face when served at dinner. These small contributions didn't go unnoticed. Alessandro began watching her interactions with his household staff, his gaze following her movements with increasing interest. When a formal business dinner was scheduled, she overheard him instructing Marco to have Miss Clark attend. The dinner proved revealing. Dressed in borrowed designer clothing that fit suspiciously well, Imani found herself seated among Chicago's business elite. When a server nearly collided with a guest, she smoothly redirected traffic and orchestrated a subtle rearrangement of place settings that prevented any embarrassment. "Your girlfriend has excellent instincts," one of Alessandro's associates commented, raising his glass in Imani's direction. Alessandro's hand found her knee under the table, a warning squeeze. "Miss Clark has many talents," he replied neutrally, neither confirming nor denying the assumption. Later that night, he cornered her in the hallway. "You played your part almost too well," he said, crowding her space. "One might think you're getting comfortable here." "I'm an event planner," she replied steadily. "Managing difficult situations is what I do." His eyes narrowed, but she caught a glimmer of reluctant admiration before he stepped back. Days later, while searching for Nonna Rosa to help with her medication, Imani accidentally entered Alessandro's private study. She froze at the sight of the corkboard covered in surveillance photos, her leaving her apartment, meeting clients, working late at her office. The timestamps showed weeks of observation before the gala. Finding anything interesting? Alessandro's voice came from behind her. Instead of fear, anger flared. You were watching me long before the gala. Why? He moved to the board, removing a photo of Carlo Vega. He's been seen meeting with other businesses in your area. Someone's creating a pattern, trying to establish connections that don't exist. So I'm being framed? The question is why. His fingers traced the timeline of photos. And by whom? Across town, Vincent Moretti received an intelligence report in his wood-paneled office. The Russo has a woman living at the estate, his informant reported. She's been there 2 weeks now. Moretti's weathered face creased in interest. Alessandro Russo with a lover? How unexpected. She's not just arm candy, the informant continued. He's integrating her into his inner circle. Every man has his weakness, Moretti mused. Even the great Alessandro Russo. Friday evening, Alessandro summoned Imani to his study. Tomorrow night, you'll accompany me to an art gallery opening. You're taking your prisoner out in public? He opened a velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond bracelet. Consider it a test of your story. His fingers were warm as he secured it around her wrist. You'll play my companion. I'll introduce you to certain people. Watch their reactions. Imani felt the slight weight of what she knew must be a tracking device embedded in the diamonds. And if I try to run? His thumb stroked her pulse point. Let's just say this bracelet does more than accessorize. That night, Imani watched security teams preparing vehicles from her window. Tomorrow would be her first venture beyond the estate's walls in 2 weeks. The diamonds caught the moonlight, beautiful and binding. She understood this outing was both opportunity and test, but she couldn't shake the feeling that larger forces were at play. Forces that had been manipulating her life long before she'd ever heard the name Russo. The leather seats of Alessandro's armored SUV creaked as Imani shifted, trying to find a comfortable position despite her nerves. Chicago's skyline stretched before them, a sight she hadn't seen in 2 weeks of captivity. The tracking bracelet caught the afternoon sunlight, its diamonds a beautiful reminder of her chains. The gallery opening is hosted by the Arts Foundation, Alessandro said, his voice clipped and professional. You'll meet people who can either verify or disprove your connection to the Morettis. How should I behave? Imani asked, smoothing the silk of her borrowed Valentino dress. Like someone who belongs at my side. His dark eyes flicked to her face, which shouldn't be difficult, given your experience managing elite events. The gallery was housed in a restored historic building, its marble facade lit by elegant sconces. Security personnel dressed as valets scanned the arriving guests with practiced discretion. Alessandro's hand found the small of her back as they entered, the heat of his touch burning through the thin fabric. Inside, the space was a masterpiece of modern design. Contemporary art pieces worth millions adorned the walls, while Chicago's wealthiest citizens moved through the space like schools of expensive fish. Imani recognized several faces from the charity gala where her nightmare began. Alessandro, a silver-haired man approached with his wife. Who is this lovely creature? Thomas Catherine, meet Imani Clark. Alessandro's arm slid possessively around her waist. She's been keeping me company lately. Imani watched their reactions carefully. Surprise, curiosity, and something else. Fear? Not of her, but for her. These people knew exactly who Alessandro was. She fell easily into her role, drawing on years of professional experience. She laughed at the right moments, asked interested questions about their art collections, and maintained the perfect balance between charm and mystery about her relationship with Alessandro. You're quite good at this, Alessandro murmured as they moved between groups. Almost too good. Event planning is essentially theater, she replied softly. The planner is both actor and director. His thumb traced small circles on her back, sending unwanted shivers down her spine. And what role are you playing tonight? The one that keeps me alive. Something flickered in his eyes before he guided her toward another cluster of associates. Imani noticed how conversations hushed when they approached, how people unconsciously stepped back to give Alessandro space. His world operated on power and fear, and he was clearly the apex predator. Near a striking metal sculpture, Imani found herself momentarily alone, while Alessandro spoke with his security team. A man materialized beside her, handsome in an easy, practiced way. The piece is called Deception, he said, nodding at the sculpture. Fitting, isn't it? I'm sorry, you are? Michael Conti. His smile was warm, but his eyes were calculating. I must say, you're not Alessandro's usual type. And you know his usual type. Our families have history. Conti moved closer, speaking softly. How did you two meet? It must be quite a story. Imani maintained her pleasant expression, while mental alarms blared. His questions were too specific, too probing. At a charity event, she said vaguely. If you'll excuse me. Alessandro appeared as if summoned, his body language radiating controlled violence. Michael, surprising to see you here. Just admiring your lovely companion. Conti's smile never wavered. She's quite unexpected. Moretti's nephew, Alessandro whispered in her ear after Conti departed. You were right to be careful. Minutes later, Alessandro's posture changed subtly as he watched the gallery entrance. Without explanation, he steered her toward a back hallway. We're leaving. Now. They emerged into a dark alley where their driver waited. Before they could reach the vehicle, shadows detached from the walls. 3 men moved to block their path, metal glinting in their hands. Alessandro shoved her behind him as gunfire shattered the night. She lost sight of him in the chaos, heart pounding as shots and grunts of pain filled the narrow space. Rough hands grabbed her from behind, dragging her toward a waiting van. Imani drove the stolen letter opener into her attacker's thigh. He cursed, grip loosening enough for her to twist away, but another man caught her arm. The world spun as she was thrown against a dumpster. Pain exploded in her head and arm. Through blurring vision, she saw Alessandro move like death itself, efficiently eliminating her second attacker. Blood soaked through her sleeve as he bundled her into the SUV, their driver executing a perfect escape. You're bleeding badly. Alessandro's voice seemed distant as he examined her injuries, his touch surprisingly gentle. Stay awake. You saved me, she mumbled, fighting unconsciousness. You're mine to deal with, not theirs. His cold words contrasted with the careful way he applied pressure to her wound. The city lights swam in her darkening vision. Through the haze of approaching unconsciousness, she heard real concern crack through his controlled facade. Stay with me, Imani. Her name on his lips was the last thing she registered before darkness claimed her. Consciousness returned slowly, like wading through thick fog. Imani's head throbbed with each heartbeat, and her arm felt like it was on fire. Soft morning light filtered through the familiar curtains of her bedroom at the mansion. As her vision cleared, she noticed something unexpected. Alessandro Russo slumped in a chair beside her bed. She'd never seen him look so human. His usually perfect suit was wrinkled. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and his hair fell messily across his forehead. Even in sleep, tension lined his face. When she shifted slightly, his eyes snapped open, instantly alert. Before she could speak, he pressed a button on his phone. She's awake. Come now. Minutes later, a distinguished older man with silver hair entered, clearly the doctor who'd been treating her. He checked her pupils with a penlight, making her wince. Definite concussion, he confirmed. The stitches look clean, 20 in total. She'll need rest, hydration, and careful monitoring for the next 48 hours. He handed Alessandro a prescription bottle, 2 every 6 hours for pain. Call immediately if her fever returns or she shows any confusion. Alessandro nodded, his attention never leaving Imani. After the doctor left, he helped her sit up, adjusting pillows with unexpected gentleness. When she tried to reach for water, he stopped her. Let me. He held the glass to her lips, supporting her head. Small sips. Why are you doing this yourself? Her voice was raspy. Surely the staff. Something dark flickered across his face. My mother died because I wasn't there to protect her. The words seemed torn from him. Immediately, his expression closed off. The men who attacked us were Moretti's. They now believe you hold some value to me, which makes you an even bigger target. Throughout the day, Alessandro transformed her bedroom into his temporary office. He made calls in rapid Italian, received updates from his men, and issued commands that were immediately obeyed. Imani drifted in and out of sleep, but each time she woke, he was there. She observed him through half-closed eyes, the fluid way he moved, the absolute authority in his voice, the efficient manner his organization responded to his leadership. This was a man born to command, raised in power. As evening approached, heat began to build under her skin. The room swam in and out of focus. Cool hands touched her forehead, and she heard Alessandro curse softly. Fever? He muttered. Sophia, bring ice and fresh towels. The world dissolved into a haze of discomfort and confused images. Something wonderfully cold pressed against her forehead. A deep voice murmured soothing words in Italian. "Nobody ever wanted me," she heard herself say, the fever loosening her tongue. Foster home to foster home. Always temporary. Never enough. The cool cloth paused in its movement. "Shh, Piccola. Rest now." Even my own parents left. Everyone leaves. Tears leaked from her eyes. So I stopped letting people close. Safer that way. Alessandro's hand brushed her cheek, wiping away the tears. She couldn't see his expression through her fever-blurred vision, but his touch was impossibly gentle. The night passed in fragments. Ice chips against her lips, soft Italian lullabies, strong hands helping her sit up to take medicine. When clarity finally returned with the morning light, she found fresh roses on her bedside table and an empty chair where Alessandro had been. Sophia arrived to help her shower and change, clucking sympathetically over her bruises. "The boss barely left this room for 36 hours, she confided while helping Imani into clean clothes. "I've never seen him like that." Later, feeling weak but determined, Imani made her way downstairs. She found Alessandro and Nonna Rosa in the garden, the old woman tending to her beloved roses while her grandson read reports. "Bambina!" Nonna Rosa hurried over as quickly as her walker allowed. "Look how pale you are. Alessandro, she needs more sun, more food. She's too thin." Alessandro watched them with an unreadable expression, but his eyes never left Imani. When his phone buzzed, he checked it with a frown. Standing, he approached Imani. His fingers brushed her uninjured arm, sending electricity through her despite their brief contact. "We need to talk when I return. The game has changed." She watched him stride away, power and danger radiating from every movement. The man who'd killed without hesitation to protect her, who'd tended her fever through the night, who'd revealed a precious fragment of his past, the man who was still, technically, her captor. Nonna Rosa patted her hand knowingly. "Come, Kara. Help an old woman with her roses while we wait for my stubborn grandson to figure things out." Imani sat in one of the leather chairs facing Alessandro's massive mahogany desk, absently rubbing her healing arm. The stitches itched beneath the bandage, a constant reminder of the gallery attack. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the study windows, illuminating the photographs spread across the desk's polished surface. "This was taken 4 months ago," Alessandro said, tapping one photo showing Michael Conti leaving her office building. "Well before the gala, before I had any reason to know your name." Imani leaned forward, studying the image. "I never met him before the gallery. How is this possible?" "Because someone wanted me to find these connections." Alessandro's voice held controlled anger. "The same someone who arranged for Carlo Vega to visit your office, creating a pattern of Moretti associations around you." He stood, moving to the window with predatory grace. "Someone methodically built a trail of evidence suggesting you were working with my enemies. They knew I would investigate any potential security breach at the gala, and they made sure you would appear suspicious." "But why?" Imani asked. "What would anyone gain by making you suspect me?" Alessandro turned, his expression dark. "Distraction. Vulnerability. The Morettis now believe you're important to me, as the gallery attack proved. Someone orchestrated this entire situation. Someone with intimate knowledge of my operations." He returned to the desk, opening a file. "Only 3 people had the necessary access to my schedule and security protocols to arrange this. My head of security, who's been loyal for 15 years. My financial advisor, who handles sensitive transactions. And my cousin Dante." Imani caught the slight tension in his jaw when he mentioned Dante. "You suspect your own family?" "I suspect everyone," he said flatly. Then, to her surprise, he pushed the file toward her. "I need your help reviewing these records. Fresh eyes might see patterns my men have missed. Your organizational skills could prove useful." Over the next several days, they fell into an unexpected routine. Imani spent hours in the study, creating detailed timelines and cross-referencing documents while Alessandro handled his business empire. She glimpsed the legitimate side of his operations development projects, shipping contracts, investment portfolios, though hints of darker dealings lurked beneath the surface. Her event planning experience proved surprisingly relevant as she tracked meetings, personnel movements, and information flows. Alessandro increasingly sought her input, their discussions becoming more open as tentative trust grew. She saw different sides of him during their work, the shrewd businessman, the commanding leader, and occasionally glimpses of dry humor. He, in turn, seemed to appreciate her methodical approach and sharp observations. One evening, as they reviewed surveillance footage, Alessandro's phone rang. His expression hardened as he listened. When? He demanded. Who had access to that route? He stood abruptly, barking rapid instructions in Italian to his security team. What happened? Imani asked when he ended the call. A shipment was intercepted. The route was confidential. Only top-level personnel knew the details. He began making more calls, coordinating his response to the crisis. While he was occupied, Imani continued examining their compiled records. A pattern caught her eye. Information leaks consistently followed meetings that Dante had rescheduled. She dug deeper into the financial documents. Her heart raced as she uncovered bank records showing regular flights to Atlantic City. But cross-referencing hotel receipts revealed Dante had actually been in New York during those trips, meeting with known Moretti associates. With trembling hands, she texted Alessandro. Found something. Dante's AC casino trips were cover for NY meetings with Morettis. His response came instantly. Lock the study. Tell no one. Coming back now. Imani secured the door, her mind reeling. She'd just helped expose a traitor in a criminal organization, one who happened to be Alessandro's own cousin. The man who'd kidnapped her now trusted her with his most sensitive investigation. She gathered the incriminating documents, wondering how her life had become so entangled in this dangerous world. 3 weeks ago, she'd been an event planner on the brink of bankruptcy. Now she was helping a mafia boss uncover family betrayal. The weight of the situation settled over her as she waited for Alessandro's return. She'd crossed a line no longer just a captive, but an active participant in his shadowy realm. There would be consequences to tonight's discovery, likely violent ones. The grandfather clock in the corner struck midnight, its chimes echoing through the silent study. Somewhere in the mansion, a door opened and closed. Heavy footsteps approached down the hallway. The grandfather clock's solitary chime echoed through the mansion as Alessandro burst into the study. His usual controlled demeanor barely contained the fury radiating from him as he found Imani surrounded by meticulously organized documents and files. Show me, he commanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Imani walked him through her findings, pointing out the pattern of information leaks following Dante's rescheduled meetings. Her hands trembled slightly as she presented the bank, records and hotel receipts that exposed his cousin's deception. Here, she indicated, spreading out the timeline she'd created. Every time Dante claimed to be in Atlantic City, he was actually meeting with Moretti associates in New York. The dates align perfectly with major security breaches in your organization. Alessandro studied the evidence, his jaw clenched. Tonight's shipment crisis confirmed it. I fed different information to my inner circle, each person received slightly altered details. The route that was compromised was the one only Dante knew. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare display of agitation. My own blood, he muttered in Italian. Imani watched as he paced the study, his powerful frame coiled with tension. What will you do? Handle it carefully. Dante has supporters within the organization. Moving against him without proper preparation could trigger internal warfare. He pressed a button on his desk phone, ordering food brought to the study. As they shared a late-night meal of pasta and wine, Alessandro gradually revealed more about his relationship with Dante. My father took him in when his parents died. We were raised as brothers, shared everything. I trusted him completely. Why would he betray you? Imani asked softly, noticing how the dim study lights cast shadows across his strong features. Alessandro's laugh held no humor. Power. Position. He always resented being second. When my father was killed, Dante expected to share leadership equally. He couldn't accept being subordinate to his younger cousin. The night deepened as they continued working, exhaustion slowly eroding their usual barriers. Alessandro spoke of his parents' murder, how finding their bodies had transformed him from a privileged heir into a ruthless leader overnight. I learned that mercy gets you killed in this world, he said, staring into his wine glass. Every decision I make must protect the family first. Imani found herself sharing her own pain, of growing up without family. Foster homes never felt permanent. I was always waiting to be sent away again, never quite good enough to keep. Alessandro studied her with unexpected gentleness. Is that why you work so hard to create perfect moments for others? Maybe, she admitted. If I couldn't have those moments myself, at least I could give them to other people. Over the next few days, as they refined their strategy for confronting Dante, Imani noticed subtle changes in their dynamic. Alessandro no longer treated her like a prisoner to be watched, but a partner to be consulted. He took her into the city, proudly showing her his legitimate enterprises restored historic buildings, revitalized neighborhoods, thriving businesses. Employees greeted him with genuine respect rather than just fear. These developments created thousands of jobs, he explained as they toured a waterfront project. Yes, I operate outside the law when necessary, but I protect what's mine. My people know I'll defend them and their families. Imani observed how he balanced ruthlessness with responsibility, violence with protection. His moral code was complex but consistent, loyalty rewarded, betrayal punished, innocence protected. Friday evening found her on her suite's balcony, watching the sun paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The door opened behind her as Alessandro approached, carrying 2 glasses of wine. The diamond tracking bracelet caught the fading light as she accepted her glass. What had once felt like a shackle now seemed more ornamental than restrictive. "You know enough to destroy me now," Alessandro said quietly, his dark eyes studying her profile. "Why are you still helping me?" Imani turned to face him, suddenly aware of his proximity and the electricity crackling between them. "Maybe I'm developing Stockholm Syndrome," she attempted to joke, but her voice wavered as his intense gaze held hers. "Or maybe you're not the monster I thought you were." The words hung in the charged air between them. The tension built until Alessandro abruptly stepped back, his expression guarded once more. "We have a meeting with Dante tomorrow. You should rest." As his footsteps faded down the hallway, Imani remained on the balcony, knowing they'd crossed some invisible line. Their relationship had fundamentally shifted, and neither of them could pretend otherwise. The morning sun filtered through the office windows as Imani sat beside Alessandro, her fingers smoothing the fabric of her new charcoal gray dress. The transformation from captive to partner was evident not just in her attire, but in how she carried herself. On the mahogany desk between them, evidence against Dante lay organized in precise chronological order: bank statements, surveillance photos, and meeting logs telling a damning story of betrayal. "He'll arrive in 20 minutes, Alessandro said, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Marco and the others are already in position." He gestured to the security feeds showing his most trusted men strategically placed throughout the mansion. Imani watched him pace, noting the tension in his shoulders. "You're still struggling with this," she observed quietly. Alessandro paused, running a hand through his dark hair. "I raised him after my uncle died. Taught him everything I know." Raw pain flickered across his features before disappearing behind his usual mask of control. "How did I miss this for so long?" "Sometimes the closest betrayals are the hardest to see," Imani offered, drawing from her own business experience. "I had an employee once, someone I mentored for years. She seemed grateful, loyal. Then I discovered she'd been undermining client relationships, hoping to take them with her when she started her own company." "What did you do?" "Confronted her with evidence, just like we're doing with Dante. People reveal their true nature when their masks come off." She stood, straightening his tie in a gesture that felt surprisingly intimate. "Resentment festers in shadows. Better to bring it into the light." The door opened, and Dante strode in, his confident smile faltering slightly at seeing Imani. "Cousin," he greeted Alessandro. "I didn't realize this was a group meeting." "Sit down," Alessandro commanded, his tone brooking no argument. "We need to discuss some discrepancies Imani discovered while reviewing our records." Dante's laugh held a note of condescension. "You're letting your pet prisoner audit our books now? Show him," Alessandro told Imani, ignoring the jab. With precise efficiency, Imani laid out the evidence meeting schedules that aligned with security breaches, financial records showing Dante's secret trips to Moretti territory, surveillance photos of his clandestine meetings. As each piece fell into place, Dante's smugness crumbled. "This is ridiculous," he snarled. "You're going to believe this woman over your own blood? How do you know she's not working with the Morettis herself?" "Wake up, Alessandro, you're being played by Moretti's whore." The slur hung in the air like smoke before a fire. Alessandro's hands clenched, fury radiating from him in waves, but before he could move, Imani's cool voice cut through the tension. "Interesting strategy, Dante. When faced with irrefutable evidence, you resort to crude accusations rather than addressing the facts. Should we examine the timing of your Atlantic City trips against known Moretti meetings again? Or perhaps discuss last night's shipping route leak, the one only you knew about?" Dante's face contorted with rage. His hand moved toward his jacket, but Alessandro was faster. In one fluid motion, he crossed the space between them, disarming his cousin with brutal efficiency. Dante's gun clattered to the floor as Alessandro pinned him against the wall. "You disappoint me," Alessandro said, his voice deadly quiet. "But family is still family. You'll be leaving for Sicily tonight. Our uncles there will ensure you serve the organization more productively." Marco and 2 other men entered, escorting a shell-shocked Dante from the room. As the door closed behind them, the tension between Alessandro and Imani shifted, becoming something electric and inevitable. Neither could say who moved first. One moment they were standing apart, the next their lips crashed together in a kiss that felt like salvation and destruction combined. Months of suppressed attraction exploded into desperate need as Alessandro lifted her, carrying her through his private door to his bedroom. Hours blurred together as they explored each other with an intensity that left them both shaken. Every touch felt like a revelation, every kiss a confession. In the aftermath, they lay tangled in Alessandro's silk sheets, the late afternoon sun painting patterns across their skin. "I've never brought a woman here before," Alessandro admitted, tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "My relationship stayed separate from this life. Until you." Imani curled closer, vulnerability making her voice soft. "I always kept people at arm's length. Foster care teaches you not to get too attached. Everyone leaves eventually." "Not this time." Alessandro's arms tightened around her. "You're mine now, Imani. No more pretending this is just captivity." She lifted her head to meet his intense gaze. "What happens next?" He took her hand, placing it over his heart in a gesture that spoke volumes. "Tomorrow, I remove the cameras from your room, the tracking from your bracelet. You stay not as my prisoner, but as my woman by choice." Lying in his arms as midnight approached, Chicago's lights twinkling beyond the windows, Imani felt the weight of the choice before her. Choosing him meant accepting everything, the darkness and the light, the violence and the protection, the complete transformation of her world. But for the first time in her life, she felt truly, completely wanted. Sunlight streams through Alessandro's like end of life, bedroom windows, casting a warm glow across the silk sheets. Imani stirs, finding herself wrapped in Alessandro's strong arms. She takes a moment to study his sleeping face, struck by how peaceful he looks without his usual mask of control and authority. The hard lines of power and responsibility have softened, making him appear closer to his actual age. The serene morning shatters when urgent knocking echoes through the room. "Boss," Marco calls through the door. "Emergency meeting with the Colombians. They've arrived early." Alessandro's eyes snap open, instantly alert. He pulls Imani closer, kissing her thoroughly before reluctantly releasing her. "I'll be back soon," he promises, already moving with efficient purpose as he dresses. After he leaves, Imani experiences a strange moment of realization. She's alone, truly alone, for the first time since her captivity began. No guards shadow her movements, no cameras track her steps. This newfound freedom feels weighty with significance as she makes her way back to her room to shower and change. Later that morning, she wanders into the garden, enjoying the simple pleasure of moving freely through the mansion. She finds Nonna Rosa tending to her prized roses, the elderly woman's face lighting up at her approach. "Ah, there's my girl," Nonna says warmly, patting the bench beside her. "I see it in your eyes. You've finally found each other, haven't you?" Imani blushes, helping the old woman with her gardening tools. "Is it that obvious? I've watched my grandson carry the weight of this family since he was far too young." Nonna begins, settling into her storytelling pose. "Even as a boy, he was always the protector. When he was 7, he found an injured bird and spent weeks nursing it back to health. That's who he truly is, capable of such gentleness, despite what this life demands of him." She tells Imani about Alessandro's childhood achievements. Top of his class, gifted at strategy games, fiercely, protective of those he loved. Then her voice grows sad as she describes the night his parents were killed. That tragedy forced him to become hard, to become the leader this family needed. But underneath, he's so like his grandfather, capable of terrible things to protect what's his, but with such capacity for deep love and loyalty. Around noon, Imani's phone buzzes with a text from Alessandro. "Meeting's running long. Have dinner with me in the city tonight? Want to take you somewhere special." Her heart flutters at this invitation, their first real date, chosen rather than orchestrated for show. While preparing for dinner, Imani studies her reflection, hardly recognizing the woman who was dragged here as a prisoner just a month ago. Her feelings have transformed so completely, from terror to fascination to something deeper that both thrills and frightens her. She's applying the finishing touches to her makeup when a knock interrupts her preparations. Luca, Alessandro's second in command, stands awkwardly in her doorway, holding a manila envelope. "These were delivered to the boss's office anonymously," he explains, reluctantly showing her a series of photographs. Imani's blood runs cold as she examines them. Surveillance shots from the gallery showing her with Michael Conti, but also clearly doctored images suggesting multiple intimate meetings between them spanning months. The boss has canceled dinner. Luca adds uncomfortably. He doesn't wish to see you right now. Devastated, Imani demands to speak with Alessandro directly, but Luca explains he's already left for an urgent meeting. Throughout the evening, she calls repeatedly, each unanswered ring increasing her desperation. She meticulously examines the photographs, noting inconsistencies in lighting and shadows that prove they're fake, preparing her defense for when Alessandro returns. Just after 11 p.m., the sound of arriving vehicles draws her to the window. She watches Alessandro emerge. From his SUV, his face a mask of cold distance as Luca briefs him in hushed tones. Instead of coming upstairs, he disappears into his study. Still wearing her evening dress, makeup perfect for the dinner that never happened, Imani heads downstairs. Near the study, she overhears two security guards talking in low voices. Dante disappeared during transport to the airport, one says. Boss thinks his woman might be involved. Imani's heart pounds as the full gravity of the situation hits her. This isn't just about doctored photos. Someone is systematically destroying Alessandro's trust in her. Taking a deep breath, she smooths her dress and lifts her chin. She's fought too hard, come too far to lose him now. With determination steady in her heart, she raises her hand and knocks firmly on the study door, ready to fight for the trust she's earned and the place she's carved out in his dangerous world. The study door opens, revealing Alessandro's glacial expression as he towers over Imani. Behind him, the manipulated photos lay scattered across his desk, beside a half-empty glass of whiskey. Without speaking, he steps aside, allowing her to enter before closing the door with a quiet click that seems to echo in the tense silence. Imani moves directly to the desk, her hands steady as she picks up the photographs one by one. Look at this lighting, she points out, tapping the first image. The shadows fall in opposite directions, and here, she slides another photo forward. I'm supposedly wearing a Cartier watch I've never owned. This location? I've never been to this restaurant in my life. Alessandro remains motionless, his face unreadable as she methodically dissects each piece of evidence. His silence weighs heavily in the room, neither accepting nor dismissing her analysis. The photos are the least of my concerns right now, he finally says, his voice low and controlled. Dante escaped custody an hour ago. Someone inside my organization helped him. The timing of these photos and his escape isn't coincidental. Imani's heart sinks as she recognizes the look in his eyes, the same suspicion she'd worked so hard to overcome during her weeks of captivity. After everything we've shared, you still think I could be involved? I think I've been betrayed by someone I considered family, Alessandro responds, his jaw tight. I think these photos appeared at exactly the moment needed to create maximum chaos in my organization. I had nothing to do with this, Imani insists, stepping closer to him. You know me, Alessandro. You've watched me every day for weeks. When have I ever had the opportunity to coordinate something like this? I thought I knew Dante too, he snaps, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I raised him like a brother, trusted him with everything, and look how that ended. I'm not Dante. Imani's voice rises with emotion. I didn't ask to be brought into your world, but I'm here now. Everything I've shown you, everything I feel for you, it's real. Something flickers in Alessandro's eyes, a crack in his armor. He takes a step toward her, one hand reaching out before dropping back to his side. Imani. His phone buzzes sharply, breaking the moment. Alessandro answers with a curt greeting, his expression darkening as he listens. When? He demands. Send me the location. No. Maintain surveillance only. I'm on my way. He ends the call, already moving toward his desk. Dante's been spotted meeting with Vincent Moretti himself. Let me come with you, Imani pleads, following him as he retrieves his weapon from a drawer. If we're separated now, your doubts will only grow stronger. No. His tone brooks no argument. You'll stay here under increased security until I return. He pauses at the door, conflict visible in his features. We'll finish this discussion later. After he leaves, Imani paces her room like a caged tiger, the evening dress she'd chosen so carefully now feeling like a mockery. The hours crawl by until around 2 a.m., when a soft knock breaks the silence. Expecting Sophia or one of the guards, she opens the door to find Luca looking apologetic. The boss sent me, he explains. They've found Dante at a warehouse. He wants you there for the confrontation. Something feels off, but Imani's desire to resolve the situation overrides her instincts. She follows Luca to a waiting car, noting uneasily that none of Alessandro's regular security team is present. Her suspicions grow when they pass the exit toward the city, heading instead for the industrial district. Before she can act on her realization, Luca smoothly pulls a gun from his jacket. "Sorry about this," he says emotionlessly, "but family comes first." He confirms he's Dante's cousin, explaining how they planted evidence against her to distract Alessandro from their real plan. At the abandoned warehouse, Dante waits with armed men, but Alessandro is nowhere in sight. Inside, Imani maintains her composure as they zip-tie her to a chair, remembering Alessandro's lessons about showing no fear. Dante circles her, clearly enjoying his moment of triumph. "By tomorrow night, I'll be running what's left of the Russo operations, and you'll both be dead?" He gloats, detailing his plan to use her as bait for Alessandro before delivering them both to Moretti. With calculated cruelty, he places her diamond tracking bracelet on a nearby table, just out of reach. As he leaves to make arrangements, Imani begins working on her restraints, keeping her face neutral while cataloging every detail about the warehouse, guards, and weapons. Alessandro's words echo in her mind. "In our world, being underestimated is sometimes the greatest advantage." She holds on to this thought as she subtly tests the zip ties, her evening dress concealing the slight movements of her hands. Dawn light filters through the warehouse's dirty windows, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. Dust particles dance in the pale yellow beams, highlighting the grime accumulated over years of industrial neglect. Imani's wrists burn from hours of subtly working against the zip ties, using a rough edge on the metal chair whenever the guard's attention wanders. Her skin is raw and chafed, tiny droplets of blood beading along the abrasions. Her evening dress, once elegant and flattering for the dinner that never happened, is now stained with dirt and sweat, torn at the hem where she'd caught it, trying to maintain her balance when they'd roughly pushed her into the chair. The cold metal seat has numbed her legs over the long night of captivity, and her shoulders ache from the unnatural position. Despite her discomfort, Imani remains alert, her mind calculating escape scenarios with the precision she typically reserved for coordinating high-profile events. She's been tracking the guards' patterns all night. 2 men, growing increasingly bored and careless as morning approaches. Their eyes are heavy-lidded from the overnight shift, movements becoming sluggish and predictable. Their conversations drift her way in fragments, voices echoing in the cavernous space, revealing crucial information about Dante's movements. He's meeting Moretti to finalize their alliance, expected back around noon to deal with her personally. The countdown weighs heavily on her mind, each passing minute bringing her closer to a confrontation she might not survive. "Hey, I'm taking a smoke," one guard announces, stretching his arms overhead with a yawn as he heads for the side door. His boots scuff against the concrete, keys jangling at his belt. The remaining guard barely acknowledges him with a grunt before slumping against a stack of wooden crates, pulling out his phone. The blue glow illuminates his bored expression as he scrolls mindlessly. Imani recognizes her moment, the kind of split-second timing she'd mastered, coordinating complex events where 1,000 things could go wrong with one mistimed action. With one final determined twist, the weakened zip ties snap with a soft plastic sound that seems deafening in the quiet warehouse. Her hands are raw and bleeding, red welts circling her wrists, but adrenaline dulls the pain to a distant throb. Moving silently despite her heels, she eases off the chair, careful not to let it scrape against the floor. She glides across the concrete, breath held, and grabs a heavy wrench from a nearby workbench, its cold weight reassuring in her trembling hand. The guard never looks up from his phone as she approaches, his attention completely absorbed by whatever's on his screen. One swift, decisive strike to the base of his skull, and he crumples without a sound, sliding down against the crates. Her hands shake violently as she retrieves his gun, the metal cold and foreign against her palm. She checks the safety as Alessandro had once demonstrated, her fingers clumsy with fear and inexperience. The weight of it terrifies her. So much potential for death in such a small object. But she forces herself to remember Alessandro's lessons about survival in his world. "In my world, Imani, hesitation gets you killed," he'd told her. On the table nearby, her diamond bracelet glints mockingly under the dusty light. She snatches it up, knowing it's her only lifeline to Alessandro, her only chance of being found in this maze of industrial buildings. The side door creaks on rusty hinges, signaling the second guard's return. Imani's heart leaps into her throat as she slips through another exit, finding herself in a maze of shipping containers arranged in haphazard rows. The morning air is crisp against her face, a shocking contrast to the stale warehouse atmosphere as she moves deeper into the complex, listening intently for pursuit. Her heels click softly against the asphalt, despite her attempts at silence, each sound making her wince. Across town, Alessandro paces his office like a caged predator, wearing a visible path in the expensive carpet. The normally immaculate space is in disarray. Maps spread across his desk, coffee cups scattered on every surface, tactical plans hastily drawn and discarded. He spent the night systematically working through Luca's known associates, interrogating some personally, each dead end increasing his fury and fear. The knuckles of his right hand are bruised and split from when patience had failed him. The security footage from the mansion plays on a loop on his laptop, Imani, leaving willingly with Luca, her face showing only mild concern rather than fear, trusting his deception because she trusted Alessandro's judgment of his men. Dark circles under his eyes betray his exhaustion, his normally immaculate appearance showing signs of strain. His shirt is wrinkled, top buttons undone, sleeves rolled up to reveal muscular forearms. He can't rest while Imani is missing, the thought of her in danger clawing at his insides with a ferocity that surprises even him. His phone buzzes constantly with updates from his organization, mobilized to find her with an intensity that surprises even his most loyal soldiers. They've never seen their boss so personally invested, so emotionally exposed, and it both unsettles and motivates them to work harder. "Sir," Marco enters without knocking, knowing the urgency overrides protocol. His own appearance shows signs of the all-night search, stubble darkening his jaw. "We've identified 3 possible warehouse locations in the industrial district that match the vehicle's direction. Teams are en route to all 3, but the area is extensive." Before Alessandro can respond, his phone chimes with a distinctive alert, different from the constant buzz of messages. His eyes widen as he checks the screen, a surge of hope breaking through his controlled expression. Her bracelet, she's activated the emergency signal. He grabs his jacket, checking his weapon with practiced efficiency. "She's alive and fighting back. Get me those coordinates now." Imani crouches behind a rusty container, her designer dress snagging on rough edges, heart pounding so loudly she fears it might give away her position. Her legs tremble from exhaustion and fear as she hears vehicles approaching, tires crunching on gravel. She'd found a secluded spot between 2 containers to trigger the bracelet's emergency function, remembering Alessandro's brief explanation of its features during a quiet moment when he'd first given it to her. "Not just jewelry," he'd said, demonstrating the hidden button. The sound of car doors slamming echoes through the complex, followed by the purposeful tread of multiple footsteps. Relief floods her system, washing through her in a dizzying wave as she steps out from hiding, expecting to see Alessandro's men in their distinctive black suits. Instead, she finds herself staring into Dante's cold eyes, his handsome face twisted with irritation. He's returned hours ahead of schedule, his expensive suit incongruous among the industrial decay, the fabric catching the morning light as he moves toward her. The first burst of gunfire makes her duck instinctively, the sound reverberating painfully in her ears. Alessandro's forces storm the complex from multiple directions, their coordinated assault catching Dante's men off guard. Shouts and more gunfire fill the air as chaos erupts around them. But before she can run toward safety, Dante's hand clamps around her arm with bruising force, dragging her back toward the warehouse, his fingers digging into her flesh. "Don't move," he hisses, his breath hot against her ear as he uses her as a shield, pressing the cold barrel of a gun against her temple. He forces her to walk backward as he retreats inside the warehouse, his body tense against hers. The warehouse door slams behind them with a metallic clang, plunging them into relative darkness after the bright morning sun, the dirty windows providing only minimal illumination. Alessandro enters alone moments later. His weapon, trained steadily on his cousin. He moves with lethal grace, each step measured and deliberate. The familiar cold mask is in place, his expression revealing nothing. But Imani sees the fury burning in his eyes, turning them nearly black with rage. The air between the 2 men crackles with tension as Dante backs away, keeping her between them as he launches into a bitter tirade. "You never deserved to lead this family," he spits, gesturing wildly with his free hand while keeping the gun pressed against Imani. His voice echoes in the cavernous space, years of resentment pouring out in a torrent of words. "You were always too soft, too concerned with legitimacy. Our grandfather would be disgusted by what you've done with his legacy. The Morettis understand real power, they're not afraid to get their hands dirty." His grip loosens slightly as he gestures, momentarily distracted by his own anger and the need to finally speak his truth to Alessandro. Imani seizes her chance, summoning every ounce of strength remaining in her exhausted body. She drives her heel into his instep with all her might and twists away from the gun. Hearing the gunshots even as she moves 3 in rapid succession, each one thunderously loud in the enclosed space, Dante falls, multiple wounds blooming red across his chest, his expression frozen in surprise as his body crumples to the concrete floor.